Hi, ladies and gentlemen. This is Mr. Green, and welcome to Pre-Cal, another one of my lessons in my Pre-Cal class. So, where should you all be in Pre-Cal? Well, uh, you should be looking at logarithmic and power functions in Unit 4. That's where I'm at right now. We're getting close to the end of Unit 4, and soon we'll be going into Unit 5, but there's only one more unit in this semester, and that's why I'm trying to point out to you, got to make certain you get everything caught up. Now's not the time to be falling behind in the course, because we're getting really close to the end of the course here. Okay? So, what are we looking at? We're looking at graphing logarithmic functions. I thought the lesson was really good at showing that logarithms are inverses of exponential functions. So the inverse of f of x is equal to n to the x, where n is some number, would be this f inverse, which is the inverse function of x, would be the log of some number x. Well, these two would be inverses of each other. That means if you did an f of x of f of inverse of x, you would get x. And if you did an f of inverse of x of f of x, you would get x. So they both would give you back x if you stuck them into each other. Very similar to that FOG that we did several weeks ago, that type of function that we were doing back then. Okay? So we're looking at an inverse function. So how do we graph a logarithmic function? Well, we can look at the graph of anything, and if we look at the inverse of it and just fold the graph paper along the y equals x line. Well, where is that y equals x line? Well, if you think about it, I'm just going to quickly sketch it in here. There is a coordinate grid. The y equals x line would be a line that has a slope of 1 that goes through the origin like that. Just like that. So if I'm looking at any graph here, and I'm particularly thinking about an exponential graph, it's going to go through 1 here, and it's going to go up like this, exponentially. Right? Well, if I fold the graph along this way, what I'm going to see is my graph starts down here, goes through 1, and goes like this. And that would be a logarithmic type function. That's what a log function would look like when it's graphed out on a normal graph. It's just the inverse. And I think that this is a very good approach for looking at how do I look at that graph? How do I come up with what that graph looks like if I'm looking at the inverse? Is to just consider folding right there along that y equals x axis and looking at the graph from that perspective. Okay? Now, the lessons go into just a little bit of calculus for you, and they're just trying to show you that there are two branches of calculus. And what we're talking about here in inverses is so that you can recognize what are we talking about when we go into calculus. There are two types of calculus, and they're inverses of each other. You got differential calculus. You've already seen this one when we were looking at the inflection points and looking at the roots of trinomials and quadnomials and quintomials and things of that nature. If you took the differential of it, you could solve those and find the influence points, or the points where it crossed the x-axis, to find the roots. And you could also use the second differential, to find the inflection points where it changed directions in the curve. Okay, so integral mathematics, integral calculus, is just the inverse of the differential. Where in differential we were dividing things apart, in inferential calculus what we're doing is we're adding them up and building them up. You're looking at the area underneath of a curve, and you've got the equation for a curve. You take the integration of that curve, and you can find the area underneath the curve in a continuous manner, rather than just taking it up and dividing it up into squares. Okay? Don't worry about doing any of that stuff. Okay? That's all just being given to you as a precursor of what's going to happen pre-calculus, what's going to happen when you get into calculus. But the concept of an inverse is what's the important part here, is that you understand where that's coming from. And that's why they bring up this calculus, and understanding that these two are kind of inverses of each other. Okay? So I appreciate the fact that you guys are always telling me that you're in pre-cal when you're sending me information. It really helps me find your information and get your answers a whole lot quicker. I'll look forward to seeing you next time we're together. Bye.